Good afternoon again and welcome to the WGSN Barometer webinar. We have a UK and European based audience this afternoon, so welcome to you all. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to give you some really great insights into what the UK womenswear consumers are thinking and experiencing with the top retailers in the industry. The data we will walk you through today is the newest addition to the WGSN Portfolio Barometer, the Customer and Brand Tracking Survey. I'm Nikki Dawson, the WGSN Enterprise Director, and here with me today is Sarah Murphy, the Barometer Insight Director. So, a brief introduction to Barometer. This is the most extensive syndicated daily survey on the market right now, tracking 130 brands and 5,000 women interviewed in the UK each month, a total of 60,000 per year. The survey is running in both the UK and the US, and tracks 150 measures or questions from demographic information and details to consideration, buzz, media metrics, the purchasing funnel, to online and offline buying behaviors and specific brand experiences. The measures can be cut to show filters from ages to household incomes, geographic locations, and clothing sizes to ensure that you have detailed visibility on the key information brands need on their consumers. With that, I'll hand over to Sarah to start introducing the Barometer data insights.
Great, thanks Nikki. So let's have a look at the type of insights the data can provide. Let's get started on what consumers are doing and what they're actually buying. So as we can see here, we're asking respondents their share of spend with their disposable income. Here we can see that clothes is the second biggest spend of female consumers. Food and eating is outranking as the top category of what consumers are claiming to spend their disposable incomes on. And you can see across the board, across all of the different demographic groups, that spend is highest on food, which did make us think potentially, is this an area retailers could exploit with regards to adding a food experience within their stores that could hopefully potentially increase their share of wallet. I think what's also interesting here is that savings, which is represented by the yellow line on the chart, is taking up a high share of spend of disposable income amongst the 16 to 24-year age group. That's not a group you might instinctively associate with such conscientiousness, but you can see that the proportion of their spend that they are using on savings is even higher than the 25 to 49-year-olds, and actually pretty much level pegging with the 50 pluses. Moving on to shopping behaviour. This data is showing the proportion of those who've claimed to have shopped in store in the last week. The data is showing that 42% of 16 to 24-year-olds have said they've shopped in store, and similar levels for the 25 to 34-year-olds. You can see shopping activity is greater for the younger ages. And now moving online, this is the percent of female consumers who've claimed to have shopped online in the last week. And overall, what's interesting is that at a nationally representative level, shopping in store is still more prolific, despite the concern everybody has with online players. You can see here that traditional bricks and mortar is still clearly very important in the retail landscape. However, looking at those younger age groups, so 16 to 35-year-olds, 4-year-olds rather, you can see that they're more likely to be shopping online than in store. Just a recap of who we're interviewing here, it is 16 to 74-year-olds, it's females, and they are nationally representative. But what we're doing throughout the presentation is slicing and dicing the data by different demographics to provide some more interesting insights. Moving on, what we're looking at now is overall spend and browsing and shopping behaviour. So we're asking consumers what they claim to have browsed and what they've bought. You can see here that tops and dresses are the biggest categories that people are browsing in. Incidentally, we also have this data by purchase, so apparel purchased, and you can see similar rankings. I think what this data helps retailers do is validate what merchandisers are putting, where they're putting their budgets into. So here we can see shirts and blouses are the fourth most browsed category, which is telling me really that they're still not going away. I'm sure a couple of years ago, shirts and blouses would have appeared further down that list. Moving on, this data will also help you target customers by understanding which demographic is exactly browsing and is purchasing certain product groups. Often buyers believe certain demographics buy into certain products, but what this data allows retailers to do is either to confirm or refute those assumptions. It also allows buyers to decide how much investment should be made within product categories. It can also help even contribute to the design and the aesthetics of the product offer. So for example, looking at the data here, we can see at a total market level that dresses are more likely to be browsed by the younger demographic. Dresses being the second product on the chart. You can see the top blue and yellow line. You can see how much they're browsed a lot more by the 16 to 24s and the 25 to 34s. And where this data becomes all the more powerful is the ability to start tracking that over time. As we said, we're interviewing 175 consumers every single day. So we're actually able to look at the data in a continuous way. And at an overall market level, you can see what people are browsing and also what people are buying throughout the year. Of course, all of this data can be cut and filtered by any demographic. And we can track all different apparel, including accessories and footwear. With this chart, we can see coats and jeans, which is the yellow and the green line. You can see exactly when the uplifts start happening in September. You can also see a slight downturn more recently in jewellery, which is represented by the brown line. And this data really can help retailers with phasing your intake and help understanding on when to launch certain seasonal products. So whilst this gives you purchasing behaviour at a product level, you can actually use our other data-driven product, which is in stock, to understand at a more granular level, at a subcategory level. So for example, what kind of boots? Is it long leg? Is it ankle boots? And so on, when they're launching or dropping. Onto some of our awareness and media measures. What we're looking at here is what we call spontaneous awareness, is where we're asking women which retailers spring to mind when asked to name some. And you can see here that Next is mentioned by half of the sample. 50% of female consumers, which are nationally representative of the UK population, recall Next without any prompts. M&S is the second most spontaneously recalled top of mind retailer at 40%. And you can see New Look and Primark being recalled by well over a third of consumers. Primark has one of the highest top of mind awareness scores amongst all of the retailers at 34%, which actually rises to 46% amongst 16 to 24-year-olds. I think this result is particularly impressive given that the brand doesn't do any notably obvious above the line campaigns or any advertising. I think also their commitment in opening new retail stores, I believe 11 were added in the UK this year alone, that's certainly helping to boost their top of mind awareness. And also the brand is very successful at driving desirability for their products. A great example of that is the product updates and the eye-catching price tags, which are posted multiple times throughout the day with their social media platforms. And they actually have over 10 million fans. So Primark clearly getting it right. Now what happens when we prompt consumers with a list of retailers and we're asking them, which of the following retailers have you heard something positive about? And that's what we call buzz. So buzz is measuring the percent of people who've heard something positive. So that's not just social media. I know buzz is often linked solely with social media. It's all encompassing sentiment. It's anything they've seen, anything they've read, anything they've heard. And again, Primark does particularly well here. Interestingly, it's quite a polarizing brand. So actually they also lead the sector, not just on positive buzz, but also on negative buzz. You've got around 9% of the population saying they've heard, the female population saying they've heard something negative as well. So even though it's polarizing, they are creating buzz and there is much noise around the brand. Nearly 1 in 5 of our consumers have heard something positive about Amazon for womenswear. I think this is a good result and certainly a retailer to watch, but as we saw in the previous slide, they're not really in the repertoire of brands that are top of mind for female consumers currently. So how important is buzz anyway? So what we've done here is we've correlated buzz with consideration. Remember, buzz is a sentiment of what's been heard recently around the brand. And you can see here that it correlates quite strongly. If you were to plot an imaginary trend line, you'd see that there is a strong correlation between these two measures. Buzz is important. So you want to be in the top right quadrant, and we can see that Primark and Next are performing well here when we correlate these measures together. So it's telling me that not only is Primark and Next achieving strong positive sentiment, they're also a considered retailer for people to shop at. And now when we look at advertising awareness, where we're asking consumers in general who you've seen an ad for in the last month, M&S is getting the highest cut through. You can see Georgia Asda a close second. And I think Primark's previous scores on spontaneous awareness and on buzz are all the more impressive, as we mentioned, considering the lack of big campaign activity compared to their high street counterparts. Only 10% of the population claim to have seen advertising for Primark. So M&S is leading the way on advertising awareness. Let's have a deeper look around that. So what we've got here is a screen grab of the actual dashboard. We have all of this data refreshed in the dashboard every 24 hours because we're tracking every single day. And we've just taken a screen grab of that. And the beauty of having a daily tracker is the ability to see exactly when peaks and troughs occur, rather than just having a one dip in time, quarterly or biannual or even annual tracking solution. Ours is continuous. And when we drill down and we look at why is M&S faring so well, we can see a significant peak here in May. See that red line? It's coming from a kind of flat line of around 25% and rockets up to 40%, exactly when they launched their Spend It Well campaign. The campaign clearly got traction, you can see, with consumers. 40% is clearly very good, and the fact that we have over 130 retailers that we're tracking allows you to benchmark exactly what good looks like, and allows them to see, compared to other brands who've launched other campaigns, how they're faring. This campaign really was a departure from the retailer's usual marketing style, and it's the first time its food and its clothing divisions advertised together under the one slogan. M&S also moved to a new ad agency after being with their incumbent for 16 years. So this data, no doubt, would have been very beneficial, not only for M&S, but also the ad agency who devised the new brand philosophy for them. So now that we've looked at advertising, let's have a quick look at the celebrities our female consumers feel the most positive about. So we're asking our respondents, again, it's a spontaneous measure, to come up, without us providing them with a list, they're not aided in any way. We're asking them to come up with celebrities that they find inspiring. This data is amongst all female consumers, so it's nationally representative. And we can see that the top 5, interestingly, they're all UK celebrities. The US isn't in the top 5, but we've got Holly Willoughby, Victoria Beckham, Kate Middleton, Helen Mirren. They're all recalled as celebrities women find inspiring. I think this is interesting, and it's useful for retailers to consider in terms of future collaborations potentially, or advertising campaigns, although I'm not too sure the likelihood of Kate Middleton launching a campaign anytime soon. But you can see the top 5 there. We can also cut all this data by different demographic groups. So we looked at this actually amongst the plus size audience, and actually we saw Dawn French jump up the rankings as a celebrity that women find inspiring. Onto affinity and consideration. So this is where we're moving into some more of the brand health measures that Barometer tracks. We're really understanding how people feel about key brands. So similar to the buzz score, again, we can see Primark as quite a polarizing brand. It's got the highest percentage of lovers, 21% of female consumers claim to love the brand, but it's also got one of the highest dislike scores, so 14% dislike the retailer. TK Maxx is actually the only retailer with more dislikers than lovers, They're in the lower echelons of this competitive set. House of Fraser is another retailer who you'd expect them to want to see their love and like a lot scores improve. 37% are currently indifferent towards the retailer, and 6% actually dislike the brand. And Amazon is one to watch here. You've got 17% of female consumers claiming to love them, second only to Primark. So let's have a look and see who's driving such strong affinity for Amazon. And you can see a clear skew here. It's the it's the 16 to 34-year-olds that have the stronger affinity towards Amazon. So you can see the filters that we've applied to the data. So we've applied age, household income, region, size, but you can actually apply any filter to the data. You can apply any lens to view our data through. So if you do have your own segments, that's quite straightforward for us to do, assuming they're not based on a 30 questionnaire attitudinal survey. But if we're able to identify them, particularly demographically, it's really easy for us to apply that to our data to make it far more relevant for your business. So not only filters with regards to profiling of our panelists, you can actually also cut it by response behaviour within the survey. So you might want to look at affinity scores amongst current customers, or amongst lapsed customers, or amongst those who've seen advertising. You can do what is essentially cross-tabbing. Now we're looking at the retailers that consumers say that they would consider shopping at. And then we have a slightly more stricter criteria. We ask them, of those retailers that they would consider, which ones are their preferred brands, preferred retailers. And again, we can see Primark has the strength of preference, with 37% claiming it's their preferred brand. You've got nearly half of consumers considering Amazon in total, and 17% of those claiming it's one of their preferred retailers. Definitely one to watch. So the top most considered retailer here is Primark. Let's have a little deeper look and see how Primark is perceived. So what this slide here is showing you is how Primark over or under indexes across the key competitors we've pulled out in this presentation. And the bigger the green box, the more they are over associated with that attribute. The bigger the red box, the more they're under indexing the average on that attribute. So here we can see Primark is seen as a comfortable retailer. It's honest, it's youthful, importantly, it's worth every penny. And where it's faring less well is premium, unsurprisingly, and worryingly perceptions of quality. So let's move on. I mean, remember, this presentation is just a flavour of all the measures we have. It's just a small handful of the measures we've drawn out here. We do have over 150 metrics that we track, but we have tried to give you a kind of flavour throughout of the different areas the survey covers off. This section now is looking at in-store and online experience, who's winning and why. So we've moved on from consideration to the all-important purchase behaviour. So here we're asking, have you bought from these retailers before? What you want to see as a retailer is a very large green box, those people who've purchased in the last 12 months. We also track this data, by the way, by last week, last month, last 3 months. But for the purposes of this chart, we've looked at those who've purchased within the last 12 months, which is that green box. So we can see 58% of women have said they've purchased from Primark in the last year. And what you want to be having is a relatively small orange box, because what that's showing you is lapsed customers. It's those people who've shopped at your store, but not recently, not in the last 12 months. What retailers need to be keeping an eye on here is that there's 36% of consumers who still haven't even bought from Amazon yet for womenswear. And you can bet that they're working on getting that percentage down. They actually have a very small number of lapsed customers. Look at the percentage of the orange box for Amazon, which obviously suggesting once they convert shoppers, they don't actually suffer from them not coming back, which is evidenced by that small orange box. So what does it mean, pardon me, for the rest of the retail mix? So looking at the far right, you see Asos, Zara, House of Fraser and Mango, with high percentages of those who haven't purchased. This won't be surprising per se for companies that have a smaller retail footprint, so Mango, for example, but for brands like House of Fraser, the number of lapsed customers, that orange box, in relation to the percentage of current customers should be a concern. Now on to perceptions of, or sorry, not perceptions, experience of whether any items were on sale or on discount when you visited the retailer, either in store or online. All of the data, by the way, can be split by channel. So we ask all the attributes about the in-store experience in addition to the online experience. But this data here is showing us that House of Fraser is the most likely amongst this competitive set to be associated with sales and discounts, and actually 10% more than Debenhams. Actually, amongst all of the 130 brands we track, it's Gap that comes out on top, but we haven't included Gap in this competitive set. Gap is the one most likely to be associated with discounts. So this chart, what we've done here is we've looked at a slightly broader competitive set, and amongst all of the retailers that we track, John Lewis achieves the best satisfaction amongst its customers, and this is in store. So let's have a look and see what is John Lewis getting right. So compared to the competitive set shown here, we can see John Lewis is outperforming on pretty much all the in-store experience measures. It's doing particularly well on the helpfulness and the knowledge of staff, and also doing well on availability of items in stock. But you can see John Lewis represented by the red line, and is overperforming all those other lines, which are the competitors. Now let's have a look and see how John Lewis fares on the product experience. And again, they're performing particularly well. Their range is appreciated. What's interesting here is that blue line. The blue line is Marks and Spencer's. And look how they're underperforming significantly on being perceived as having stylish or on-trend products. Certainly something for M&S to take note of. And then we can even break all this data down and understand satisfaction by apparel. Again, the blue line is M&S. You can see the red line is John Lewis, where they're performing quite well. You can see there's some areas where they're performing better than others. But look at the blue line, M&S again, absolutely owning the underwear markets. They are achieving the highest satisfaction on underwear, and none of the competitors are even coming close. You can see here as well, Next, which is represented by the green line. They're doing particularly well on jeans and on trousers in comparison to the competitive sets. Again, we've looked at a wider competitive set again, and we can see that amongst the customers of these retailers, it's Asos that's most likely to be recommended. So this is our NPS score. Look, lots of different agencies calculate NPS differently. Some look at different ways of defining advocates. We've looked at the percent of people scoring 8 to 10 off a 10-point scale for those people who would recommend the retailer. And we can see when asked which of the retailers would you recommend, Asos comes out on top. So they're clearly getting something right. So we've got all of those attributes again split by channel, so we can understand exactly what is it that Asos is doing where they're overperforming. And Asos on this chart here is represented by the purple line. You can see Asos does well on the images and the videos of the product, and also the text description of the products. And of course, all of this data is tracked over time. So if changes are made, either in store or online, we've actually got the data to see if that has any impact on scores and how the brand is perceived on an ongoing basis. So yeah, that's a real brief snapshot of different areas that the data covers off. The key takeaways from this presentation is food and eating out. It's still the top category for disposable income spend. So consideration perhaps of incorporating food experiences within stores could help gain share of wallet. We've looked at the shopping behaviours both online and in store. 16 to 34-year-olds are actually now more likely to say they would shop online than in store. However, at a NatRep level, that's a nationally representative level, overall, in-store is still more prolific than online shopping. Primark has one of the highest top-of-mind awareness scores, despite not investing in any above-the-line advertising. It's doing a really good job at generating buzz. The M&S Spend It Well campaign, which launched earlier this year, had excellent cut-through. 40% of consumers claimed they'd seen advertising for the retailer. And remember, we are asking specifically about women's wear. So there's no, we're not talking about M&S Food or M&S Bank, it's purely about women's wear. Amazon is certainly one to watch, with strong levels of affinity and low levels of lapsed customers. In store, the winner there is John Lewis. Their customer is very satisfied. They're really getting it right, the in-store experience and with product. And online, Asos does well for overall online experience. Their customers are the ones who are most likely to recommend the brand. Over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Sarah. So that concludes the look at the barometer data for this session. I suggest now we take a look at a couple of the questions that came in throughout this webinar. First one, how often is the survey sent out? Sarah, do you want to answer that?
Sure, yeah. So it's sent out every single day to 175 female consumers. That's 5,000 a month, 60,000 a year.
Great. The next question, how do you get access to the barometer data? I'll take that one. Barometer can be accessed a couple of different ways. We have an annual subscription, which includes access to the daily dashboard that Sarah showed, monthly and quarterly reports, or simply to have access to quarterly or monthly reports dependent on your needs. We would encourage you to please get in touch with Sarah or myself with the contact details there, and we'd be happy to come in and do a 30-minute complimentary debrief specific to your brand to run through more in detailed depth about your brand, the methodology, and the data that the consumers are telling us at the moment. So with that, thank you for joining us today. We hope you found this session useful, and we look forward to talking to you, many of you, in the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.